It is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce a minister from Shawinigan. There is something about Shawinigan that produced the best politicians ever. For those of you who know, who may not know, our former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien is also from Shawinigan. The Honorable Francois Philippe Champagne was first elected in 2015 as a Member of Parliament for Saint Maurice, Champlain in Shawinigan. And he previously served as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he had numerous roles in the government. For the past 2.5 years, he served as the Minister of Science, Innovation, and Industry. Minister Champagne's background is business and law, and he had executive positions in numerous international firms. But I think one of the most important things about him that you may not know, in 2009, Minister Champagne was named Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. I think that's inspiring for younger generation. We are so pleased to have a minister at the first in-person conference after 3 years, and we didn't have minister in 2019 because it was federal election. You may know, so it has been almost 5 years that we didn't have the Minister of Science to present at the CSPC. So we are quite excited. Merci beaucoup, Minister Champagne. The floor is yours.
What a great moment. Hi, everyone. How are you doing today? Good. There's a good of energy in the room. Wow. We just had a chance to walk the corridor and see everyone. Yeah, you may remember the other guy from Shawinigan. He's a bit taller than me, by the way. That's why they call him the little guy from Shawinigan. It's a real honor to be with all of you. And c'est vrai ce que vous avez dit, Monsieur le Président. Ça fait longtemps.
And it's true. It's been a while. We haven't seen each other, but it's great to see each other in person.
This is like a big family reunion with just a bit more cousins coming to the party. But it's good to see you all after so many years. And so much has happened since then. And Mr. President, I was thinking as I was walking and looking at the team that we have this year, the best way to navigate uncertainty and target sustainability for me is through science. And it's through definitely making sure that we push the boundaries of knowledge. So it's a real pleasure to be with you all today and really spend a bit of time. I think we have like 2 hours together. But since it took 45 minutes to just walk in, we may have to extend the program a bit. I apologize for that. Champagne, I'm usually the appetizer when we come close to dinner. So we'll be together for a bit as we get going. I've not even started the speech, by the way. So this is just a warm-up, just to tell you how delighted I am to be with all of you. Murad, I want to say thank you. Thank you to you and your team. And I think you deserve a big round of applause for all the work, bringing us together, making sure that science in front and center in everything we do. So I just want to acknowledge on behalf of everyone in the room the amazing work that you've been doing and your team, and how grateful we are to have people like you really make sure. And as we were walking in, I was saying it seems that Canadians have kind of felt in love again with science. I mean, we went through so much together, and I think there's never been a better time to be certainly in the science field, because I feel that Canadians really felt in their lives the importance of science to ensure their health and safety among many things, and certainly when you think about climate change. So I think there's never been a better time to do that. And before I got up here, I took the opportunity to walk around. There's a number of amazing people on the room just next door, and speak to many of you on my way in, and some of you that I met yesterday, about the new and innovative things that are happening here in Canada. And you know, there's moment in history, there's moment in life, there's moment where you feel there's generational opportunities. And I certainly feel we are in one of these moments. So I feel really privileged to be doing that with you today. I heard from you about what's happening in your labs, your research facilities, and your offices, and obviously in the classroom. Yesterday, we had a great event with Let's Talk Science. I think the president is here somewhere. I saw her. Oh, you're just there. Yesterday, we were inspiring, I think, the next generation. And we had some astronauts with us as well, which was really great. And Artemis finally went up, you may have seen in the sky, so this is good. We're going back to the moon and soon to Mars, and I intend Canada to be front and center, trust me. Yeah, we can applaud. That's a big thing for Canada. And I was with the NASA administrator, and I can tell you everything that we discussed, but I can tell you we're going to be front and center in that next chapter of space exploration. And I must say all the discussion I had in the last few hours and days, because we started talking about science, particularly yesterday, left me inspired. It left me optimistic, certainly about the future. And many of you know me by now. I'm a pretty optimistic guy by nature. And I can tell you that I was pretty energized, even if I needed more energy. But I felt in our discussion yesterday and coming here today that I have never been more optimistic about the future of science and what we can do together. And really, Canada's place in the 21st century. And I know we've said that before and we've heard that, but if you look at what the world wants is what Canada has to offer. And it starts very much with talent. And it starts very much with people, and start very much with you. And so that's why I'm confident about the future, because when I meet each and every one of you, and I have the pleasure to do that frequently, I'm really inspired about the potential that we can achieve. And even at a time like this, whether it's COVID or the war in Ukraine, we're facing many challenges as humanity, or climate change, or the global challenges which are present in our supply chain. I'm optimistic about what Canada and what Canadians can accomplish together. And if you look at the big challenge of humanity today, I'm one who believes that science, technology, and innovation will provide us the breakthrough. We saw it with COVID-19. I'm sure we are going to see it the same way with climate change in many respects. Because we have seen, and I think that through these moments of COVID-19, and certainly in climate change, I said it at the get-go, I think that science has become front and center in the way that people think. And I think that's a good thing, because we need the support of Canadians as we go forward. And if we can inspire the world, that's also a good thing, because I intend with you to own the podium. Each and every one of you individually own the podium. Now we need to do it as a nation and make sure that science is on top of the podium when we talk about Canada. Because for me, that's the way to lead. The economy of the 21st century is based on knowledge. And certainly if we have this basket of knowledge at the forefront of the newest technologies, this is the best insurance policy we can have for prosperity for decades to come. Chaque jour, on le voit, les chercheurs, les stagiaires.
Each day we see Canadian researchers find new innovative solutions for the more pressing problems I was talking earlier of COVID-19, climate change. Obviously, I was saying that I think people have renewed their relationship with science. They understand that science enables us to have the discoveries that can face the greatest challenges, COVID-19, but health in general, and more generally climate change. So in this period that's has never been seen before, researchers and scientists have a critical role to ensure our well-being and the quality of life of Canadians, but also of the whole of humanity. And their contribution was underlined very importantly during COVID-19. That's why science and research is at the heart of the priorities of our government. You have seen that since the first day, Prime Minister Trudeau put the science at the heart of it.
Mr. Trudeau really, from the get-go, made science front and center in everything we do and how we make decisions. And I think this was very much welcomed by the community. I see a lot of people smiling. And I think it should be. In a world where people confound oftentimes opinion with facts, we need to get back to basics and establish the facts, establish reality, and then we can have a discussion, debate. That's part of democracy, but I think you play a big role in grounding people in reality, and then we can have debates, as we should in democracy. Vous le savez, c'est pour ça que dès le début, on a fourni.
You know, that is why from the start we gave a strong financial support to the scientific community, and even at historical levels, because if you look through Canada's history, we're talking of more than $14 billion that were invested since 2016, and on top of a new funding that I will be announcing today.
More, I want to talk to you about why we are here today. And I think it goes back to the theme, Mr. President, that you chose for this conference, which was navigating uncertainty and targeting sustainability. And I like the way you frame it because, uncertainty is clearly, and I keep saying, if you look the world today, stability, predictability, and the rule of law is in high demand and short supply. And I keep repeating that. If people have seen, we have had record investments and record number of people who come on our shore. It addressed this issue about uncertainty. And sustainability is the words that you hear everywhere about decarbonizing our economy to make sure that we collectively leave a better place for children and generations to come, and creating the jobs now, but in the economy of the future. And I'm pleased to brag, I do that on behalf of Canada, that you may have seen yesterday, but Bloomberg of all, noted that Canada is the second place in the world now when it comes to critical supply chain for battery electric vehicle. It's not a small thing. We were fifth, we came close second to China, and we're ahead of the United States. And for Bloomberg to say, don't sleep on Canada because that country is going and roaring, that's good news for all of us. And it's one aspect, and I know we're going to do a panel after, but when we put our collective efforts, we can achieve great things. The history of Canada has a lot of these things and milestones, and I'm always reminding by people who had this job before, and certainly transforming our industrial policy, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do, but obviously science, technology, and innovation will be at the core of it. When I go around the country, and what I hear from people is that they want certainty. It's true in Canada, but it's certainly true in many parts of the world. They want predictability, and in uncertain times, this is a moment for Canada to shine. And certainly that's what we're doing, and we're going to be continuing to do that. I keep reminding that you are some of our best ambassadors. As a former Foreign Affairs Minister, not everyone in the world wakes up in the morning thinking about Canada. I do, you do, many of us do. But when you're trying to promote some of the best innovation, technology, and science that comes from our country, we need to work together in doing that. And I must say that the first thing that people talk to me about when they think about Canada, it's about the people. It's not about subsidies, by the way. If there's any journalists in the room, I keep saying that none of the investment that we've attracted, which are generational in our country, is because of subsidies, because trust me, there's people around who have far more money than we can ever invest. But the first thing they ask me is, do you have enough talent to support our growth? What's the learning ecosystem in Canada? Is there enough a pool of research to bring us much further? And I'm reminded just of one of Moderna, which comes to mind because we did that together. And that was really the first aspect of the discussion when I met with Stéphane Bancel. By the way, that was a cold call. So anyone who wants to do cold call, I would encourage you to do so because, from one cold call, we got a factory. So that's not so bad. Never hesitate. The worst that can happen is that they would say no. This time they said yes because we were aligned in our vision. But in this, the first question he asked, he said, are you sure, Minister, that the ecosystem of research is enough? Because we're not looking backward. You could say COVID-19, whether we are over or not. But he said we have a platform of about 30 vaccines. Some of them are going to cure cancer. And this is where we want to go. So this is just examples of what we've been able to achieve together. But when I look at all of you, and I can say with certainty, with a resounding yes, when people tell me, do you have enough of what it takes in the economy of the 21st century? And when I see all of you, and each of you individually, because I know many of you, I can be confident in saying yes. And we have made significant achievements when I think, for example, on AI, when I think about quantum, when I think about cybersecurity. If you look at the platforms that are going to be powering the different industries of the future, clearly Canada is leading. And I'll just tell you, if you ever want proof points of that we're holding the podium, when the German Chancellor came recently, the German Chancellor, not at the request of the Canadian government, but the German Chancellor, yeah, they're telling me 5 minutes, but we're together, we're having fun. They chose one thing. They chose to go to the AI Center in Montreal. And that was very telling to me. The whole German delegation wanted to do one visit when they were in Quebec, and the one they decided that they chose was to go to an AI center. Because they said, you know what? We have something to learn from you. You guys are ahead. That was the message. And for me, this is good. Now, to the announcement, because I appreciate that we have other things to do. That's why today, I am so proud to be here with you today to announce more than $1 billion in additional funding to support scientists, research, and students. And I understand why my team was saying, get to the announcement, because that's supposed to be the big thing. So everyone is supposed to applaud now. $1 billion. $1 billion. Évidemment, très heureux d'annoncer.
Obviously, very happy to announce with you today this extra funding of over $1 billion to support scientists, researchers, and students. It's an investment that will support researchers throughout the country in various fields and at various stages of their careers, whether it is to modernize installations, research installations. Several of you told me if we want to attract better talent, we need to have the equipment, the installations, the latest technology, and we will also be funding maintenance of the equipment, because it's good to build, but we have to maintain to always be at the spearhead of technology, and also assistance to students and the creations of a research chair of Canada. So funds to continue putting science and research at the heart of our activities in Canada and remain one of the pioneers.
$1 million will go in different things, modernizing equipment, making sure we have installations which are at par with some of the best research institutes in the world, and also a Canada Research Chair, because we know that we need to do more to support our scientists, our students, and our researchers, and I must say I've heard you loud and clear. I'm also happy to announce new funding for promising Black students and postdoctoral fellows is now open. And this was something I think we all care, because we must do better to ensure that in Canada, the research community reflects the diversity of our communities. And I'm very proud. Yeah, I think we should. It's good. I think we should all be proud of, because I can tell you one of the things I hear all the time around the world is that diversity and inclusion, which is so core to the fundamental value of our research institutes around Canada, is attracting. It's kind of the magnet that people want to see. And you know what? Every time I see someone coming and someone with support here, people have a choice. So we need to remain at the forefront, because trust me, we are competing also for the best talent in the world. And I also want everyone here to know that we have heard the calls for the research community to boost support for students and trainees. I've heard you. Some of you have even known my Twitter account. So I've seen you very loudly and read you very frequently. So trust me, I get the message. And certainly I'm committed to find more ways that we can better support Canada's next generation of researchers and talent. And trust me, for me, this is not an expense, but it's an investment. And I keep saying that around the cabinet table. A lot of what we do together is investing. It's investing in our future. It's investing in our prosperity. And it's investing because when it comes to research, science, and innovation, if you don't do the investments today, the cost will be far greater after, because you're going to slip very quickly. It's a very competitive world. Alors, la science, la recherche, évidemment.
So science and research will enable us to meet the major challenges of humanity now, and I know that you're ready to support me in this approach to be sure that we're always first with the scientific community.
Mr. President, now you're looking at me. I would say three things. Let's seize the moment. Let's be ambitious. And let's make sure that we own the podium when it comes to science, technology, and innovation in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. Monsieur le Président, la parole est à vous. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah? Okay. This one or this? That one. That's right.
Thank you so very much. I told you, it's Shawinigan. Don't forget that. So thank you very much, Minister, for making this big announcement and choosing the CSPC to make these big announcements. In fact, part of it, of course, is resonate with the crowd here. As you may know, that we are a small non-for-profit organization, rely very much on the work of volunteers who are mainly postdoc, graduate students, early career researchers, and policymakers. Every year, 70, 80 of them, and many pursue career in science policy. So that message very much resonate with them, and thank you very much for this announcement. So now we have a conversation with Minister, a couple of questions from a professional journalist, and then hopefully we can open the floor to questions from you. I want to invite Sophie André Blondin to the stage. Oh, please, Sophie, come with us. Sophie André-Blondin est un journaliste et est un chronique québécois.
Is a columnist and a Quebec journalist. She represents the Radio-Canada show Les Années-Lumière. And she also has a radio show on Radio-Canada. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Everybody can hear me. Yes, Les Années-Lumière is a science show that is exactly as the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Champagne, was saying. That's quite a portfolio. I understand that you have a lot of energy.
French, a bit of English. We're going to go back and forth, both languages, so Canadian.
Indeed.
And please prepare your questions, because I don't want to be the only one working here.
We can do a bit of Italian if you want as well.
I'd rather not.
Okay. Right.
Not today. Alors, c'est un titre.
So, Science, Technology, Innovation, and Industry and Innovation is quite the title. So how do you manage to balance all of these three? Because the industry requires a lot of investment, a lot of energy, and science. How do you maintain the balance between the three components of the portfolio? Well, I think that we see a very close connection between the science, industry, and technology. First of all, when I began, because this is my fifth mandate as a minister, so this is my fifth portfolio, and when we saw at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, and when the COVID struck, and we had to repatriate people from all over the world, and there were a lot of people on cruise ships with Princess Cruises. And so I remember the first thing we told ourselves as a Minister of Global Affairs, well, despite of the billions that we've already invested, we weren't very well prepared. We didn't have a vaccine, we didn't have personal protection equipment, and I asked, well, how did we end up here? Because we invested billions, and yet we are completely unprepared. So at that time, I reasoned that we have to draw up a list of critical components that will ensure long-term resilience. So we were talking about vaccines, and now we're talking about semiconductors and critical minerals. But the thing I understood back then is that with COVID, we won't choose if there's going to be another COVID crisis, but we can certainly choose to be better prepared. And that's where technology innovation has led us to make record investments in biological research, because when I began, our capacity, for example, with vaccine production was about 31 million doses. And I think today we have a capacity of 610 million. So that's a very concrete example of the return on our investment. But then with the industry, what we did with Moderna, because we bought vaccines all over the place, but I changed, and I figured we should do strategic procurement.
We buy, but we manufacture.
And that's the applications. That's a very, very concrete part of science and technology. And now, good, we're going to have this possibility of fabricating vaccines here. But let's talk sustainability. It's part of the theme here. Sustainability for the planet is something. Sustainability for the ecosystem of research is something else. How do you plan to make sure that you, but your successors as well, provide a stable, predictable funding for fundamental research, as an example, to feed all these ecosystems?
Well, I'd like to believe, but this is me, that it would be very difficult to reverse the trend. I think that, Canada, my dream is to be the green supplier of choice to the world. I mean, we're going to be the first country in the world to be producing, for example, green steel, green aluminum. We're going to be producing green batteries soon, I believe. Oh, I hope, but we're very close. And I'm dreaming of producing, for example, green microchips. And I think in the world where you're looking at the number of industry, the decarbonization imperative is everywhere. And I'll give you a very concrete example. Just last week, I was in Edmonton. We announced the first and the largest hydrogen plant in the world.
Yes, I heard interviews
And
about that. Yeah.
this is amazing. People don't realize the biggest one in the world will be in Edmonton. I'll give you another example where you bring science and you say the investment we've done, which will link in a sense. The big thing you have to take, at least when I talk to CEOs around the world, is that supply chain are going from global to regional and more emphasis on resiliency than pure efficiency. I'll give you another example. When we invested or co-invested with Rio Tinto and Sorel in Quebec, for those who are in Quebec, this is going to be the largest production site of titanium, not in Canada, not in North America, but in the world. And what you do with titanium, you do titanium powder. And what you do with titanium powder, you do 3D printing. And with 3D printing, what you do, you print parts of jets in theater of operation. Talk about friendshoring. Talk about us being integrated in a smart, logical way, displacing supplies that were coming from countries that don't share our democratic values.
But my question was about fundamental research, where we're not addressing the issues of the world today,
Sure.
but addressing issues of a world we don't even know about yet. This is fundamental research. We never know what RNA vaccines. We never know what's
By the
going
way,
to
it was
pay off.
invented in Canada. If we had just been better at commercialization, we would have done it here. But
I know we
that's
have great
another
researchers
topic.
here. Alors pour le monde de demain,
Right.
la recherche
For the world of tomorrow, fundamental research is going to allow us to navigate a new paradigm. How are you going to ensure that this part of science has also retains your attention and gets proper funding? Well, I know there are many of my colleagues from national research councils that are here. We work hand in hand. I think that the investments that have been done in the billions of dollars since I've arrived are important. And I think that we understand more and more the important role of science in the economy. It's not just the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do. And I think that's understood globally. So do you believe one day that we can go back, reverse our I don't think so, because Canada is competing with the rest of the world. And when we talk about fundamental research, it's important. Artemis was just launched. If you look at the role of Canada in space,
To be around the moon and beyond. We're going to Mars. And if you go talk to NASA, Canada is the prime partner. And two things they've asked us to lead. Two things. Imagine. If you go to Mars, I mean, it's what? You go to the space stations, it's 400 kilometers.
Yep.
You go to the moon's 400,000. Mars is 400 million kilometers. They have asked us to be very specific, for example, on food and health. And these are the type of things where we're going to invest massively that will have rippling effect here. But I would say with the Granting Council, we're on our way to support fundamental research because a lot of the things that have come to applied research obviously started there. And you're quite right. I think time has accelerated the speed. I don't want to be Polaroid. I want to be Apple. That's what I say often to people in business. I said, don't talk to me about Polaroid because the way we took
You have to
pictures.
find another example. Apple is getting old. You have to find another.
But I'm getting old too, so you tell me what's the next big thing. But the way you take pictures is not like when I was a kid, like my mother used to do.
There was a survey just before you came where people interviewed MPs and from different parties at the federal level, and it was obvious that politicians want more science, but they
Great.
want more palatable science, understandable science to them. Il y a un problème de médiation entre la.
so there's a mediation problem mediatization problem between the scientific community and the political community. So you, as a minister, can you facilitate that mediation? Well, I try, and I think it's an important role that we all share. I look at you in the audience today, and you have a role in the ecosystem. We each have our part to play, and you do it very well because you also make science understandable to the common person. And we're able to invest is because people understand why and within what we're investing. So I didn't see the survey, but I'm glad to see that's the case. So what I try and do is to always draw the links so that people understand why it's important to invest. So we talked about vaccine. For me, it was a very tangible problem. I think for people, and you can tell me if I'm right, but what I felt within the population is that there was a new relationship with science People understood, but it wasn't always a good change. No, but you understand that people understood that without science, all of a sudden, people understand the role of science when it comes to climate change as well. And just last week, thanks to science, we're going to change the names of...
I think we're doing that with one other country to change the norm when it comes to cement and concrete. This is changing the world, literally. I'm one who believes, and I've been 20 years in business, you say, change the specs, change the norms, change the standards, you change the world, because that's what we're going to be doing. And Canada, for what we are, we're now leading internationally the new standard on concrete and cement. If we just do that, if we did only that thing, we would probably have done more than many conferences on climate change if we can change that norm. Because if you look at the federal government, we buy like 40% of all cement and concrete. If you look at the carbon emission and the investments in the US of about $1 trillion, it'd be madness to build without addressing some of these issues. We have all the technologies.
And energy transition, decarbonation,
Exactly.
I know these challenges are there ahead. They're not for tomorrow, they're for today. These are interesting challenges. Have you prepared your questions in the audience? People are ready, I guess, to. And just before the first question, because I want to scoop for my show on Sunday.
Oh, right, okay.
What did you talk about with NASA investigators?
Oh, I'll tell you one scoop.
Okay.
I'll tell you one scoop. I'll tell you one. As long as you don't repeat it all. No, it's funny because
Not
it's going to be
before
on the
Sunday
show.
noon.
The NASA administrator has a dream, which is very Canadian, and we're going to make it happen.
That's it? It's
Well,
a
listen,
dream.
if I
Okay.
tell you what it is, you're not going to cover the event when we do it. But I'll tell you that the NASA administrator has a childhood dream that he can only realize in Canada. When we do that, we'll do another announcement that will blow your ratings when this happens.
Okay, okay. I'll trust you. I'm opening the floor to questions now. Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Lapointe. I'm a professor at McMaster University. And I don't know if you know, but CSPC was just a month ago a partner of another event, the Canadian Forum on Innovation and Societal Impact, that was held at McMaster. We convened 125 stakeholders from across sectors, policy, academia, municipal government, and the social sector as well, to think together, to find ways to align education, policy, practice in the social ecosystem. Because we think that social innovation is important, that innovation in the social sector is important. And so I come to the CSPC conference as someone who is deeply committed to innovation as a scientist, yet I'm a humanist and I really value the social science and humanities. And I just want to know, what does that say to you as the Minister of Science when you're thinking about social innovation, or the fact that ultimately any innovation is for the purpose of human well-being? It's not just about the sexy tech. I mean, I think social innovation is not as sexy as new cement or things like that. But so what is your conception, or how do you approach social innovation? How do you value it? What would you say as our minister about the importance of this aspect of knowledge and science and
Social
wisdom?
sciences. Yeah.
Listen, my background is more on the social side. I'm not an engineer, so trust me, I understand in a way what you're saying. And I can tell you in a lot of our communities, I come from rural Canada. Social innovation is at the core of a lot of services we provide. We have to be really creative in how we do that, because just the nature of our distance to major city centers. I would say, you're quite right. I mean, we talk often about the things that people can touch and see. In a sense, people like that. We have these examples in space, the one I use. But I would say that I am very committed to support you as well in the social innovation. And I think we need to do a better job. And when I say we, I probably look at myself in the mirror when I say that, as to what are the things that people can relate to, in a sense that they see the value in the work, and also to attract the next generation of people. We talk a lot about STEM, but social innovation, I think, is at the core. And I think there's huge transformation in society as we speak. I mean, the speed of change and the impact on people. I just think about as technology is moving so quickly, how is that going to impact our social fabric and the impact in so many respects in our families, in our communities,
Especially in the north.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
the great north.
I mean, you take my writing, it's like it's bigger than Belgium. Talk about, we have to be really creative about when people need services, they need mental health support, they need to be able to connect, for example, how we can do remote medicine. I mean, there are so many things that we need to work, and putting people front and center in that is probably the most important thing, because at the end of the day, we all do that research and science to serve humanity. And so, but I think I need your help to help me to probably be better at what I'm doing, in a sense of explaining that to people and have concrete example to say, you know what, that's your taxpayer dollars. This is what it means to you. This is what it means to your mother. This is what it means to your kids. And we can be, I think the world is looking up at Canada in many respects. And so let's use that position of leadership, not only to lead in Canada, but I'm always a big believer in leading internationally.
No, thank you very much for your answer, which I really appreciate. And I think that you're absolutely right, that there needs to be a narrative to really see this enterprise around social innovation as something that's
Around
continuous
people.
with the science. So,
But thanks to
At the
you, you
base.
do the work, so thanks to you.
But you're good at spinning it and introducing green concrete and sexy things.
Listen,
Next question.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Prochaine question.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Tessie Sanchi.
We can hear you well, at least from this side, we can hear you really.
No? How about now?
Yeah.
Good? Okay. My name's Tessie Sanchi. I cover health for Hill Times Publishing. Just wanted to check in on CARPA. Election 2021 promised a CARPA, you know what that is. And then Budget 2022 promised a Federal Investment and Innovation Agency. I think some folks might be wondering if the Innovation Agency is supposed to actually replace CARPA. So can you just tell us if CARPA is still in the works? And if so, what's the update on that?
Does everybody know here what CARPA is, how it's inspired by DARPA? I see
Yes.
people. Okay. Go.
That's probably the only room where we can assume people know CARPA and
Yeah,
DARPA.
okay.
If I said that like in the street, people would look not so sure. They think it's the French version of CARPA, DARPA, or whatever. No, I mean, listen, you're quite right. And when we started it, and I was a big believer in the model of DARPA, and then CARPA was just kind of the Canadian, because it would not have been focused on defense for obvious reasons. And then we went on the road, and we listened. And I went in Finland, and we talked to people in Israel, and we talked to a number of different innovation agencies. And we tried to understand the Canadian ecosystem. And we came to the conclusion that the best model in order to make sure that the innovation could be commercialized, and what was the gap, the missing gap, the 1 to 20 million, and how others have been doing, the model that we came out based on consultation and discussions and a number of scholars was really the Finnish model.
Which is?
The Finnish model is more about, they created an innovation agency, and as opposed to an equivalent of DARPA, they look at that model as well. But in order to have a very efficient DARPA, you need a very deep bench to be able to absorb these very moonshot type of approach to research.
Most of them won't pay.
Well, you need to have, and if you have, you need a really, really deep bench to absorb that. And when you look at the ecosystem in Canada, in the field that we wanted them to look, whether it's climate change, whether it's human health, we were feeling that, it might not be the best way to invest our dollar, but a model closer to the Finnish Innovation Agency. I'll give you a very practical example. You look what the Finns, and I was there, and in my previous life, I used to do business there as well. But I would say, look at what they've done with forest products. It's phenomenal. Today, what Finland is leading the way, and the innovation they've put in that, we're still, if you look at our industry, we're probably few versions behind what they're doing now with the molecule that they get from the trees. And so the way they were working with companies and the way they were financing them was probably closer because of the size of our economy, the type of field we were focusing on, although it's going to be, industry agnostic and it's going to cover everything. But we felt that on reflection, I would say, that this was a better model, maybe for now, for Canada, and certainly the one that we could finance.
Have you started implementing it?
Well, we just put the Innovation Agency, you may have seen Minister Freeland put that in the fall economic statement, and it was in the budget. And we already have a model that we can implement very quickly, because I think there was a couple of things that came out. If you look at the finished model, it needs to be quick, needs to be on the ground, needs to have a certain level of independence, and it needs to be industry agnostic. And we followed that, and we felt that considering what they have as the economy, although it's a much smaller economy in Canada, but it was closer to what we could do for now, and to help more concretely the companies, because one of the things, and I'll stop there, but we really mapped out the ecosystem. We have the Research Council, we have the Global Innovation Cluster, we have IRAP, we have SHRED. We need to make sense of all of that.
That's a busy ecosystem.
And trust me, I can't say everything we're going to do now because I want you to come to the announcement when we do it. But I would say that we'll have kind of a council to kind of make sure that all of that is coordinated. And we're big enough, but we're small enough to have a very good sense of direction. Independence and execution, but a focus on what we find as our priority, which clearly are going to be around climate change.
So to be continued.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question here.
Yes, thank you. My name is Brian Owens. I'm a freelance reporter. On the $1 billion, I was wondering if it was possible to get a bit more detail, if it's available, particularly on the support for students and trainees. And specifically, will that be following the recommendations of the Support Our Science campaign, who are asking for a 48% rise in stipends and a link to the Consumer Price Index?
Well, it's in that direction. It's certainly not the full 9 yard, as the American would say, but a lot of the financing, and I'm quite happy because time was short, I did not detail all of it. But there's renewal and new Canadian research chair, for example. There's also a new program to support students, I think 5,700 with some programming to support them as well when they do their research. But I'm quite happy to provide you more specifically the breakdown of the, it's quite simple. It's about people, equipment, and upgrades, if you want, in very, very simple bucket. The people piece is probably more than 1/3 of it. Then the equipment piece is probably the other third, and upgrade of installation is probably there, just out of memory. But I'm quite happy. We have the whole breakdown. I just didn't want to list all that because, if I go on $1 billion per line, it might take more than the time that the president has asked me to be on the podium. But we're quite happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Jim McClellan from Queen's University and Simon Fraser.
Thanks for
Pardon?
welcoming. I was at your university just Monday.
I understand that. We're very glad you came down. Just to build, it's somewhat related to the last question, but Canada has tremendous talent and knowledge and idea pool, talent pool. The perennial debate is how to span then the gap to how that gets mobilized, either entrepreneurially or intrapreneurially. And so I'm just wondering if you could comment on what sort of initiatives or important steps we can be taking to span or shift that cultural mindset, both amongst, say, faculty, amongst students, to make it more, sort of boundary spanning, essentially, right? So you've got people who may be spending most of their time strongly focused on the research that they're doing, who may or may not be as entrepreneurially minded, and whether it's saying maybe you'd like to pursue an entrepreneurial path as well, or at least have that awareness help span, cross that boundary. I would have some thoughts on that.
I think Europe does that fairly well, probably better than we do in many respects. I agree with you. How do you go from pure research to the lab to basically somehow commercialization and making sure that we have enough of that? I think the Innovation Agency will be able to help with that, to make sure that we kind of bridge that gap where you come out of the university, you have this great product, but you don't have your first customer. I'm also very keen. We need to change purchasing as well. One of the biggest purchasers of goods and services in this country is the federal government. And I tell you, every time it's shocked me to see that we're not using that in a more strategic way, I would say, because what people want, it's not a grant, they want a customer. And I keep saying that to my colleagues, what they would want. If you have Canada as your first customer, the world is open to you. By the way, I keep saying around the world, we have a market access to 1.5 billion consumers to our trade agreements. And a lot of the companies, I'll give you one, which is very practical, which is doing recycled paint. And I happen to know them. They said, Minister, we sell like 60% in the US. We've never been able to sell 1 gallon. I think they still sell paint by gallon in Canada. It's crazy to me. And he said it's reduced like 40% of less greenhouse gas. It's recycled paint. They recycle all the paint in North America. And he said, yet most of our market is the US, but we're based in Canada. And so this is the type of thing. We need to use the lever. I mean, again, I come back to Moderna oftentimes just because of the way we did that was not an evolution, was kind of a revolution of the procurement process where we said, you know what, if we're gonna buy it anyway, let's make sure we get more than price, we get value. You know, what's the value? These people are gonna invest hundreds of millions. People have focused on the building, which is great because people like it, you touch it, you see it. But the real deal isn't the research piece. It's far more valuable than the building, by the way. I can't disclose the amount, but trust me, it's far more than the building. The hundreds of millions they're gonna put isn't the research piece. That's what we want. That's kind of the smart way to do it. I think if we can move our procurement this way to support more of the innovation that's come out of university and the technology and be the first customer of choice, I think we would do, in my sense, but you tell me, a great service to a lot of people who say, you know, we have this great technology, we have this clean, I can think of carbon cure people, and I mentioned cement and concrete, you know, we have all these technologies, but again, they said, if you were the first customer, God, we would have a resume that we can sell around the world. Why? Because we stand for traceability, quality, reliability. You put a Canadian flag on a product, it already helps you. You really capture the attention of people.
And now we hear the industry minister and the science minister and how he manages to marry these two ideas. They don't want grants, they want a client. I'll remember the line here.
Thank you very much.
We have time for one last question. Thank you for your question.
Hi there, I'm Gavin Douglas, a postdoc from McGill University. I'm asking...
You can bring the microphone up. It was made for me, sir. So.
So a lot of, I think over 50% of postdocs in Canada are international.
Yeah.
And it's very common for them to want to explore the job market in Canada.
Yes.
And I've heard from many peers that that's a major struggle. So they're often, their work terms are for like 1 year, a year and a half, and then they're forced to find a job elsewhere, not actually to stay around, even though they may have gained a lot of skills in Canada, they might have a lot of potential. And so I'm wondering, do you think that's just like a mistake based on current immigration policies that could be resolved? Like, because essentially, I guess the idea there would be that we don't want, in principle, immigration has to be highly controlled to not let Canadians lose out on jobs, basically. I guess that's the motivation. And so I guess, but I see it as these are highly trained researchers that actually, these are exactly the kinds of people we would want to immigrate to Canada, you'd think, to really enhance innovation in Canada. So is this something your team is thinking about?
I would like to say thank you for that question. Those are exactly the people we want in Canada. They came here, they know our culture, they know our institution. They are probably some of the greatest contributors, the entrepreneurs, the teacher, the researchers. Listen, there's a lot of things we need to fix when it comes to immigration, but certainly to welcome. And I think it's kind of a paradigm shift. You know, I come from a generation where, you know, people were saying, well, people were coming, are they displacing a job or something? But now we all realize those are our creator of wealth in so many ways in our society, enriching the fabric of our communities. But also, if you look at today, the only way we can win is with talent. And when you have a PhD like you and colleagues who do that, those are the exact people you would want in our country. So yes, there's things we need to fix. You may have seen, for example, we changed rules recently because I learned, I must confess, that students were not allowed to work more than 20 hours per week. Why is that? And now we changed that. Now they can work, I think, like 40 hours, whatever is the legal limit by province. So we removed some of these things which are making, I mean, we're talking about labor shortage, and yet we were having systemic. And the great thing, I would say, this doesn't cost anything to the Treasury. Doesn't cost anything to any of us. Those are rules that I don't know were applied at the time where things were really different. And I think your point, and I keep saying, people have told me, Minister, it's never been cheaper to get an education in Cambridge or Oxford now, if you look at the price of currency. So we need to realize we're competing. So we need to have our immigration system, which is in line with the deadline where people apply. Because I used to be an infrastructure minister.
That's a major, yeah.
And I used to say to Treasury Board, It doesn't matter our calendar year. Construction season is 4 months. If you don't get the answer by then, you can wait 80. You can give me my answer in 9 months. It won't matter, because if you build in the north, you need to book like a barge to bring the thing by this date. 1 week after, it's gone. You're going for a cycle of a year. But it's the same thing when you talk about students, and I so wish we could ingrain that in the system to say, when do people apply? Because if they don't get their response, they're shifting. They're going to go to the UK, they're going to go to US University, they're going to go to Australia. And it's that sense that we are in a competition for talent. And everyone who's coming, we should be grateful and thankful. That's certainly my view.
That's a nice way to end our
Merci,
conversation today. Merci beaucoup.
C'est un grand plaisir. Merci à vous.
Merci d'avoir été là.
Thank you very much.
Friendly reminder, everybody, that Les Années-Lumière is a science program on CBC, French CBC, and we're always interested in echoing your science. If you're producing science, you're a researcher. If you speak French, that's even better, but we also do interviews in English, so thank you for being here. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Merci beaucoup, Sophie André. Session. Merci beaucoup, Ministre.
Thank you, Sophie André, for this excellent session, and Minister.
Tradition since Minister Duncan was here. So a photo op with CSPC volunteers. So we do this every year, so they would love it, and we thank you for that. So thank you.
Are we doing a bend then? Like, what is that?